I used to struggle a lot with being too heavy. It's a bit tough to admit, but it's part of my story. To tackle this issue, I came up with a plan. I started walking 1 to 2 miles every day, which became my regular exercise routine. So each morning at 6 a.m. before heading to work, I would walk 1 to 2 miles. I'd leave my house on an empty stomach, not eating anything, and drive about 10 minutes to the nearby park. There was a forest around it and a play park in the middle. Usually I wouldn't see many people, especially in the cold winter. It would just be getting light around 6 or 7 a.m. Anyway, I have a very strong memory from one day, and this memory is special because usually when I walk, I only see a few people with dogs. Very rarely, since it's so early at 6 a.m., and the ones I see are either biking to work or seem out of place. I tried to avoid those people, even though I knew some of them might be not so nice. I was around 38 years old. I'm a female and I didn't wear anything attention-grabbing, just leggings and a jacket, as my main focus was on reaching my weight loss goals. So one morning, I drive to the park, put on my walking stuff, and right away, I start walking the 2-mile loop. As I go around to the left side of the loop, I'm about halfway when I see a man up ahead. He's shouting into the trees. I start thinking, this guy must be a bit crazy, or maybe his dog went into the forest and found something. Who knows? So now, this guy was walking really slow. It only took me about 2 minutes to catch up to him. Remember, when I turned the corner to go left halfway through my walk, he was a good 200 meters ahead of me. I was walking pretty fast, so it took me about 2 minutes to reach him. As soon as he saw me behind him, he stopped. He began staring into the trees and stopped yelling. Then he started walking a lot faster, like he didn't want me to pass him. I found this kind of strange. I had no idea what he wanted or why he was yelling earlier. He was wearing a tracksuit, so I thought maybe he was out for a run or was maybe out exercising like me. He looked like he was in his 50s. He was bald on the top of his head with long hair on the sides and back and had glasses on. I know, kind of like the typical look of someone following you, but I didn't think much about it. As I get closer to him, he realizes I'm right behind him and he decides to stop suddenly. He turns around and stares at me as I walk past him. I say a simple good morning, but he doesn't reply. He just keeps staring at me with really intense eyes, and at this point, I started thinking if I should have turned around earlier and just walked back the way I came. It still would have been 2 miles, so I would have reached my goal. As I walk past him, he's still just looking at me without saying anything. He's not yelling or walking anymore. I keep walking, and I have maybe about a quarter of a mile left until I get back to the car. As I pass him, I don't hear him walking anymore. I can just sort of tell he stopped because we were on one of those gravel paths. You can easily hear people coming towards you on the gravel, even if they're walking slowly, not to mention running. So there was quietness behind me, and I could sense this guy just staring at me. I felt really uncomfortable and tried my best to walk faster. When I looked back, I saw he was still standing there. I don't know if I triggered something in him, but after that, he started walking after me. He walked much faster after me than he did when I was coming up behind him. That really scared me, so I sped up again. Before I knew it, I could hear this guy walking at the same pace and rhythm as me. I could tell because the sound of his steps matched mine on the gravel path. I didn't want to look back by now, and I was pretty sure this guy was really trying to come after me. It felt like he might grab me and drag me into the side of the forest to do something bad, or he might hurt me because he seemed like a real creep. I didn't know what to do. He was walking fast, but so was I. I couldn't walk faster than him, and I definitely couldn't run away, so I just kept walking quickly. I prayed I'd run into someone else up ahead who could help me. I didn't have any pepper spray, a taser, or even a whistle, as I never thought I'd need them before. In all the years I've been out on my own, nothing bad ever happened. But now I was really wondering, is this the time when something bad is about to happen, like being hurt? or even killed. I had no clue. My phone was in the car, so I couldn't call 911 or try to reach my husband for help. After about 30 seconds of hearing him walk, I realized that this guy isn't catching up to me. It might sound weird as I tell you this, but this guy was like imitating me or something. He was trying really hard to walk like me and at the same speed. He even swung his arms the same way as me. Before I knew it, he was walking next to me, copying everything I did. I realized he wasn't joking. He had serious challenges. Whether it was mental, I couldn't say for sure. There were no caregivers around, and he seemed totally out of control. So, I figured he probably wasn't going to hurt me badly. Or so I thought, but he was very unpredictable. He followed me all the way to my car and didn't say a word. And every time he spoke, it was just mumbling. He would say some random words, or just whistle. I guess that was just his way of talking, or maybe he was shouting at the trees, I don't know. I finally got back in my car, took a drink, then drove off right away. I called my husband and told him about what happened. He told me to drive straight home and not stop anywhere. This strange guy was just walking back into the forest as I drove away and looked in my mirrors. This was the weirdest experience I've ever had, and from now on I change my morning walk to the evening. I either go with a friend or my husband on his bike. But what was that guy even doing in the forest? And what was up with him? Did he not have someone taking care of him? Like a family or a caregiver? Maybe I should have called the local ward or psych ward, but I didn't think about that then. I live in Ottawa, Canada, and this incident happened around 2 years ago when I was in 8th grade. This new girl, let's call her Claire, came to my school, and even though she wasn't in my classes, she was friends with my buddy, Cole. For about a week, everything was normal. Then, during lunch, Claire and her friends started looking at me. I didn't really pay attention, but later that evening, I got a text from an unknown number. It just said, "Hey." Being confused, I asked who it was, and they replied saying it was the girl from lunch who was looking at me, and that's how we started texting and hanging out at school. I started to really like her. When I thought it was the right time, I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes, without any hesitation. Then she told all her friends, and the news even reached my cousin Danny, who was a year younger and goes to Claire's old school. The next day, Danny texted me asking, "Why Jacob? You barely know her." "What do you mean?" I replied. "She has a bad history with her ex," Danny said. As a teenage guy, I was like, well, this is my chance, but Danny texted again saying, "She has a bad history with her ex-boyfriend. She ended up stabbing him with a knife in the gut, sending him to the hospital." "Oh shit," I said. My heart sank because this was my first real relationship, and I didn't want something bad to happen to me. But at the same time, I was really curious to know if the rumors about her were true. So that night, I texted her and asked if she wanted to play 21 questions. She said yes, so we started with simple things like, "What's your favorite color?" and such. Then, I asked more serious questions, like, "Do you smoke? And have you ever been with many people?" She answered yes to all of them. On the last question, before I had to go to bed, I asked, "What happened with your last boyfriend?" She responded suspiciously, asking, "What do you mean? Have you already heard? Who told you?" I didn't want to rat out my cousin, so I just said I was curious. She then said, "Sorry, I gotta go. Bye." The next day, she asked me to come over to her place. She mentioned she was home alone, but I was scared because of what happened with her last boyfriend. But still, I was kind of excited and was hoping something might happen. I said yes, but right after I sent the message, my dad called me from the basement and said, "Jacob, come up for some hockey." We were running late for the first practice of the year. I felt both upset and relieved. I had a real reason not to go, but I was upset because I couldn't. After hockey, when I came home, I got a message from my friend, Cameron. The message said, "It sucks you couldn't go over to Claire's house as you would have had a great time." "What do you mean, Cameron?" I replied.
Your girlfriend, she was great.
He replied. I felt my heart skip a beat and was really sad. My friend Cameron, who knew I was with Claire, had met up with her, so to speak. I texted Claire right away.
Claire, we're done.
What I didn't expect was for her to beg me to stay, but I said no, that's it. Later that night, she sent me a picture on Snapchat, showing her arm all freshly cut up, and the caption said, "All thanks to Jacob." I went to bed without saying anything in reply. I just let her take her time to recover. The next morning, I woke up with over 100 text messages, all covered in knife emojis. Now I was really scared, to be honest. It was Monday, so I had to go to school. Her locker was right behind mine, so I couldn't see if she was going to do something. I was afraid she might attack me at any moment. The day went by so slowly, and the whole time I was scared. I got so worried that I asked the principal if they could check her locker because I didn't feel safe at school that day. The principal wanted to know why, so I showed her the text messages. After seeing them, she agreed. When she came back, she told me what they found, and I couldn't believe it. They found a needle with ink, razor blades, and a 3-inch knife with Jacob carved into it. The principal called the police, and she got kicked out of our school. I didn't hear anything about her until last week. I was at my cousin Danny's wedding, and she told me that after what happened, Claire went to 3 different schools, and at each one, she caused more problems. So I'm happy that I dodged a dangerous situation. Before I start telling my story, let me share some details about myself. I'm 14 years old and have 2 older sisters who have already finished college. They are 39 and 26 years old. I also have 2 little twin brothers who are 5 years old. My mom is a doctor and my dad owns a diner. Anyway, this happened when I was 11, in my 5th grade year during graduation time in late May and early June. My best friend, let's call her Katie, was always there for me. But sadly, she moved away a week before graduation, and I felt really sad and lonely without a friend. Katie had been with me since kindergarten, always in the same classes, and it felt like she was always there for me. From the beginning of kindergarten to almost the end of 5th grade, we shared so much. Losing her friendship felt like a punishment. Luckily, another friend, who is now my boyfriend, let's call him Joe, was there to support me and keep me happy. I really didn't know what I would have done without him. In June, I got a message on Kik from a guy named N. I didn't know who N was or how he got my Kik, because I only shared it with close friends. This was before everyone used social media a lot, so having a phone and social media was a big deal for me. But anyway, N messaged me during school saying,
"Hey, how are you? I hope I'm not wasting your time."
I was unsure about what to do because I didn't know him and was worried he might be weird or something. So I didn't reply right away. I waited until I felt safe in my room later that day to reply to the message. I replied to the guy saying, "Hey,
Not to be rude, but I don't know you and you messaged me during class. But how did you get my account?"
Soon after sending that, I got a quick response saying,
"Oops, my bad. I thought you were the girl on Roblox. If you want, I can remove you right away."
I was surprised at how fast he replied. I wondered if he had just gotten home or was homeschooled to respond so quickly. It felt like he was waiting for my reply, even though it took me about 3 hours to respond. So I said no problem, I could use some new friends. A few minutes later, he replied saying,
"That's great. So what's your name?"
I told him my name, and he told me his name. Then I asked N if he had a picture of himself, and he sent me about 15 of them.
"You're pretty cute,"
I said. Then, to be fair, I sent some pictures of mine. Around 9:37 p.m. that night, he asked if he could call me. I felt nervous and scared because you can't always trust people, even if they seem nice. So I had to lie and tell him I had a bedtime and needed to go to bed. He texted me asking,
"Why not? It's Friday. You can stay up a little longer, so what's the rush?"
I then told him that I needed to be up early tomorrow to go to the hospital for a health checkup in the morning. He said,
"Okay then. Good night, baby doll."
I was a bit confused, but also a little happy. Guys don't usually talk to me in a romantic way. They're mostly just friends. Hearing this from him made me feel happy, like I meant something special to him. After ending the conversation with him, I texted my friend Joe, but when I told Joe what happened, he said he didn't like N and that I should block him. I told Joe that it was the first time a guy said something like that to me, and he should be happy for me. Joe is a year older and my best friend since I was 7. He explained that guys shouldn't call girls names like that because they might be trying to trick them into liking them, only to hurt them later. I told Joe that he was just being jealous, and then I said I was going to bed. Okay, fine. Sorry for coming on strong, but if you decide to date this guy, don't come crying to me when he breaks your heart. I sent a goodnight text to Joe and started texting my best friend Katie. She told me I should date him, but shared some rules before dating. She also said that if we ever break up, she wants first dibs. I laughed and said no way, and we joked about it for a while. The next morning, around 10, I got a new message from N that said, "Hi baby doll, how did you sleep?" Taking advice from the talk I had with my friend Joe the night before gave me the courage to say, please don't call me that unless we're actually dating. It seemed like N had a plan because as soon as he saw my message, he replied with,
"Oh, so you want to date me?"
I was speechless at that point. Even though he seemed nice in his pictures, I had never talked to him on the phone yet, and he wanted to date me.
"No, not now. I'm only 11, so it would be weird."
I texted. I guess I made N angry because he said,
"Oh, okay, fine then. We're going to talk tonight about this, and you better answer my text, okay?"
What? I thought to myself. Is he yelling at me through text? I didn't know what to say, and that was the first red flag that something might be wrong. First, he wanted to call me, then he asked me to date him. And now he's yelling at me because I said no. I should have ended it right then and there, and never responded to him again. But no. I agreed to his text and said,
"Okay."
I saw all these warning signs in my head, but I ignored every one of them. After that day, a couple of months passed and we were FaceTiming each other. Another friend of mine, let's call him Henry, came into view on my end and gave me a hug, saying I was his best friend. But then, only 2 seconds later, N hung up on FaceTime and sent a text saying he could cheat as well. It took me 2 hours to explain to N that Henry was just my friend. Obviously, he was a jealous kind of guy and couldn't trust me around other guys. Another warning sign that I ignored. Besides that incident that day, everything else seemed fine. It was like he was in different moods whenever I did anything he didn't like, so after that I made sure any contact with my male friends stayed hidden from him. You can probably tell by now that N was quite demanding. He was somewhat controlling over me. I would often get messages from followers on Instagram. It was an influx of messages from other girls, claiming to be from his state or school. Apparently they were looking out for me, telling me I needed to break up with N and find someone else fast before something happened. I thought it was just a prank. Maybe it was his friends just messing with me. Months passed and me and N were now about 2 years into our relationship. Around that time, I started thinking our relationship wasn't the best, and maybe we should break up. So in the summer of 2016, he came to my area. It was going to be our first time meeting in person instead of just on a screen. I told him I wanted to meet at a public place, and we agreed to meet up at the local park. A few blocks away, there was a restaurant where we could grab some lunch. After that, his mom could pick us up, drop me off at home, and they could go back to their hotel. We met up, and I could see that he was cute in person, just like he was on the screen. But I had my best friends, Katie, Henry, and Joe, all watching from a distance. I was so happy that Kay could make it, because she was visiting her dad that week. So I thanked her for being there for me. N and I ended up talking for about 2 hours, and he even gave me his hoodie. After that, we walked to the restaurant and asked for a table. I sent a message to my best friend saying, "The dragon is in the nest." It was our code, so to speak, telling them to come join us. As usual, I hugged all 3 of them, but I saw that N was getting angry. He pulled me by my arm and told me quietly,
"I could break up with you right now if I wanted to, but let's act like I just told you something so that your friends don't think I'm some psycho. This is the last time you'll see your friends tonight. Now laugh."
He was being rough with me, both verbally and physically. I can't explain how I was feeling at that point, so I did as I was told. I laughed, but it was so awkward. It was a giveaway to my friend Katie. She noticed how weird it was and asked if I needed to go to the bathroom with her. I nodded and quickly walked to the bathroom. Once there, I told Katie everything that had been happening, and she was shocked. She said we needed to be out of his sight right now, and that N needs to be out of my life. So me and Katie found the back door and texted the boys Henry and Joe that we were waiting outside. I sent a long message to N. Once it was sent, I told Katie that we need to get to my house, away from the restaurant and away from N. When we got back to my house, I was starting to calm down, but then there was banging at the door not too long after. Someone was outside yelling, calling me bad words and saying things like,
"I'm going to enjoy taking your life and drinking your blood. You don't cross me at all, girl. You're going to regret this, and I'm going to make sure of that."
We called the police. Katie was on the line with the dispatcher, who then said that the cops were on their way. We later found out that while N was at the restaurant, after getting my message that it was over and I was going home without him, he pulled a knife on Henry and Joe. My guy friends who were still at the restaurant were keeping an eye on him, so that made it all clear. N was not okay. How could I have missed that about him? He had a weapon, threatened to hurt me, and he meant it. What was wrong with this guy? In short, the parents of these boys were informed, and they told me that the reason N wanted to keep me was that when he was a child, he was very close to a girl who had suddenly disappeared. They believed that this didn't sit right with their son, but after everything that happened, something tells me that he might have caused that disappearance, and I'm glad that I didn't become the next disappearance. I was by myself in my college apartment waiting for Saturday night to finish. Time was going by so slow and I couldn't sleep, so I tried eating some snacks, but it didn't help. On Saturdays, I usually take a shower at midnight, and that night was no different. While I was in the shower, I noticed words on my bathroom window. They said,
"I'm watching you and I always will,"
with a heart and a handprint. I didn't pay much attention to it and just went to bed, getting ready for my shift the next day. The following Saturday, when I took a shower again, I covered the window this time. After I finished and got dressed to leave, I heard knocking on the window. The noise kept getting louder every second, and there was another message. It said,
"Honey, I love you, and I know you feel the same. Let's make it happen, and with you next to me, I know we'll be happy."
It had 2 hearts and 2 smiley faces. Now I got scared and ran. I grabbed my phone to take a picture and show it to the police, to make sure it was real. When I got home after showing the pictures, those messages were gone. I was tired but too scared to sleep. Though eventually, I did fall asleep. I finished all my college classes and was getting ready for work the next day. But before my midnight shower, I made sure to have my phone with me. After my shower, I got dressed and was about to leave when I heard knocking. A creepy voice whispered,
"Annie, are you planning to leave me alone like that? Come on, Annie."
I got scared and hid in the kitchen, locked the door and grabbed a knife for safety. I called the police, told them everything, and said where I was hiding. I couldn't open the door. They promised to send police right away. Then I realized I didn't look closely at the picture I took or read what was on the window. When I finally opened it, I was really shocked.
"My love, I'll treat you like a princess. Submit your body, heart, and soul to me."
The police arrived within minutes and kicked down the doors. 2 officers escorted me outside my apartment, staying with me for safety. I was so scared that I was shivering when one of the police tried to comfort me. After a few minutes, they came out of my apartment and found a man hiding inside. It turned out to be my next-door neighbor who had been stalking me. He thought we were going to be together, so I had to take him to court and get a restraining order. After everything that happened, I had to move out of that apartment and get away from there. I haven't seen the guy since, and I really hope I never do again.